remember the reason. And try to generate a positive motivation. For using your time this evening. Base it on your reason. Do people understand how to do that? Anybody know how to do that? That's a question. I ask lots of questions.
Can you repeat the question?
Do you know how to set an intention based on your reason?
No.
Okay, somebody throw out a reason.
To learn.
I'm sorry?
I want to learn.
Okay, you want to learn.
Reason.
Okay, so what kind of positive intention would fit that? Wanting to learn?
To listen.
To listen? Yeah, so listening, you know, it's just that simple. If you're curious, you still need to listen. What helps you if you're curious or you want to learn? What state of mind is a helpful mind to have? Oh, yeah, that'd be ideal.
Yeah.
A calm, clear mind. Yes, that would be lovely.
Curious, open mind.
An open mind. You know, so we want to have a mind that's kind of open, that because a closed mind or a mind that's going to argue with what you're hearing isn't going to hear. You know, you'll be filtering everything through your own ideas, which of course you want to investigate any teaching with your ideas. But while you're listening to the teaching, you really can't hear them if you're doing it all through the filter of, I don't know about that. So this is why an open mind is so helpful, to just kind of, okay, I don't know. I'm here to learn. I'm curious, you know. And you know, and if something comes to mind really strongly, you know, like, I don't know about that, you want to write down the question just so that you can think about it later. If it's not, you know, and there's also always time for questions. Well, not always, but sometimes there are times for questions. Okay. So those intentions, to listen, to have an open mind while listening, you know, they kind of fit for any reason for coming, you know. Because if you're here in order to end your own suffering, you need to listen. You need to listen with an open mind. You know. Another thing that's very helpful, especially if you're trying to learn techniques to reduce your own suffering, you know, say maybe you're a little bit beyond curiosity and you know, and you're already sort of thinking, you know, a lot of the things in the Buddhist path really fit for me, you know, so I'd like to learn this one. Taking notes is really helpful because you're not likely to remember it all. You know, it's not easy to remember the jargon, the new vocabulary, all that kind of stuff. So, and then guess what you have to do with that? Before you do that, you have to read your notes again. You know, for most of us, the time where if we just wrote it down, we would remember is over. When we were young, if we just wrote it down, we'd remember it. You know, that's not necessarily true now. So good idea to, you know, and also it helps you see what your questions are. Because when you look back over it, you might go, could she have possibly have said that? That doesn't make any sense. And that's a big clue. Okay, need to ask a question here. Maybe I heard it incorrectly. Maybe I said it incorrectly. Who knows? But it's a good thing to check it out. So we're here for this first series of teachings on Thursday nights for the action of purification. Who knows what that means? You're allowed to participate, those of you at home. You may have to shout at me. Yeah, go ahead. Purifying the negative seeds of karma. What the hell does that mean?
That's why I'm here.
Okay, so we have someone who wants to understand what in the world that means. Anybody got a suggestion?
Actions that accumulate merit first.
Is that what reverses it? Accumulating merit? Okay, so the actions of accumulating merit should help with purification. In a very broad sense, that's true. But purification's a very specific activity. Okay, purification is an action that we do in order to help us recognize our negative actions of body, speech, and mind, own them, take responsibility for them, not sit around and blame others about it, or come up with a list of rationalizations about, oh, well, it's justified this and all that stuff. It's about recognizing the harm that we do to ourselves and others by doing negative actions with body, speech, and mind. So the main purifier of that is regret for the harm that you've done, both for yourself and others. What's the kind of harm we do for ourselves when we're talking about this kind of thing?
That's beating yourself up, or
Beating yourself up for what? Why would you beat yourself up?
for the mistakes that you've made. You're not kind of forgiving and cleaning yourself.
Okay, so not forgiving yourself, not for the mistakes you've made, beating yourself up for the mistakes you've made. So in that sense, what are you harming?
Oh, more than one thing. You can harm your body by overeating or not eating.
Okay, yes, that's true. So when it's a negative action, what are the kinds of negative actions we're talking about here in Buddhism?
Yep.
Killing,
Lying,
stealing,
sexual misconduct.
Harsh speech.
Thank you, Don. Harsh speech, divisive speech, my personal favorite, idle speech. Then there are ones of mind, the mind of ill will, wishing harm to come to someone, wishing to perhaps even do that harm, who knows? And also
Covetousness.
thank you. Covetousness, that word I can't pronounce. Can you got it on there? Sorry, we're trying to get these screens right. Okay. Covetousness is that craving we have for the belongings of others. And those belongings can be people, can be their partner, it can be their things, it can be their success, be all kinds of things. It's that desire to make it yours, I want that, And these are a body, speech, and mind. Killing is in particular, they're talking about killing human beings. Like if you take a vow not to kill in Buddhism, it's about not killing human beings. But it's any kind of killing. It's the mind that says, ooh, I don't like that, let's kill it. Like mosquitoes, We want to practice a mind that doesn't go there, that doesn't think, oh, the appropriate response to this annoying thing is to kill it. So we're trying to train our minds away from that kind of thought. You know, obviously, killing a human being is far more negative than killing a mosquito. But the mind that wants to kill it for your own convenience is a very negative mind, whether it's a human being or a mosquito. Does that make sense? Probably not. Think about that, you know, because there's not a whole lot of difference in those two minds. Saying, I want this, and I'm willing to kill something for it. You know, the actual physical action of killing a human being is far more negative than the actual physical action of killing a mosquito. But the mind that precedes it is sort of the same. You know? Now, what about the mind? Oh, I shouldn't, this is not a class on karma, but it's really hard not to slip into that. So anyway, so this is what we mean about these negative actions of body, speech, and mind. So you have these thoughts that are negative, you know, critical of others, judging others, thinking negative thoughts towards others, you know, all kinds of things. We also have speech, you know, where we might say something harshly to someone else. We might be impatient with someone else, and it'll show in all of our actions, you know. So the body, speech, and mind thing, you know, when we're reflecting on actions we want to purify, we want to keep in mind that we're talking about our thoughts, our words, and our actual physical actions, you know. Okay. Purification involve, okay, let me see if I can do this. This is sad. Okay. Is that it? Any questions so far?
Having regret for your past negative actions this lifetime and other lifetimes, regretting them, not feeling guilty, but regretting those actions.
We're going to go into
Owning
that.
them, and then vowing not to repeat them. It's purification.
Yeah, so there's some steps to purification, what we call the 4 opponent powers, you know, and what these opponent powers are trying to do is affect your mind, the way you're thinking about it, you know, because it's our mind that leads our actions of speech and body. Okay. Just a second while I look for this. Here.
Can bad karma that it is already ripening be purified, or it's only the seeds?
It's wouldn't that be nice? Okay, so Cecilia's question is, can bad karma that's already ripening, what that means is that some negative action you've done in the past is now resulting in some event in your experience now, you know, like somebody drives into your car, okay? Now, what kind of action in the past would that reflect?
May have been inattentive,
Might be inattentive. Is that particularly?
inattentive driver caused accident.
What other people cause accidents? Drunk drivers
On their cell phone.
on their cell phone.
Aggressive.
Aggressive. drunk, inconsiderate, me first,
Self-cherishing driving.
self-cherishing driving, careless, of course. But the worst of those where someone's like actively taking risks with other people by getting in their car, like a drunk driver, actively being an aggressive driver because you're late. And so you just don't take into account other people's anything, safety, property, whatever. Okay. So if this is happening to you, you've just had someone's just done this to you, your car's just been hit. That means a seed that you planted in the past life, this life, has come to fruition by you experiencing the effect that's similar to the cause. So that means you must have hit someone's car in the past with the same kind of mind. So once a karmic seed has become active, it's been activated by all the conditions coming together, and it's live and in person. We can't do anything to stop it from ripening. It has ripened. Okay. Now, there are things we can do even once it's ripened, to help with mitigating the effects long term. But the most powerful purification comes before it ripens. So this is what's wonderful about a daily purification practice, because it means you take the opportunity every day to look at your day and kind of go, oops, that wasn't good. Oops, I heard someone doing this. And then you purify it that day. Okay. Now, okay. So I'm going to do a little meditation on sort of the mental process we go through in trying to develop the kind of mind for a purification practice. Okay. So take a moment to just kind of get comfortable in your seat, or not comfortable in your seat, or whatever best way you can do it. I'm completely sitting wrong. Okay, that's better. And now set a motivation, kind of just go within for a moment and set a motivation to use, that you want to use this time well for reflection, that you want to, give it a shot. Doesn't mean you have to be good at it. Doesn't mean your mind has to, become calm and serene. Just means you're going to do your best at listening and reflecting on my suggestions. So just take a moment to get comfortable in your seat, comfortable with your breath. Just noticing it going in and out for a minute. I want you to bring to mind a time when someone did something to you and you felt harmed, hurt, mentally, physically. And try to remember what they did, what was said, the expression on their face. And try to remember a specific event Doesn't have to be a big deal. And try to remember what thoughts arose in you. What did you think when it happened? What feelings did you have? Did you feel it in your body? Where did you feel it? Is it at the heart, the gut, the neck? What do you imagine your face looked like? Or do you recall trying to keep your face blank, not showing any hurt? Try to recreate that feeling in your body. And allow yourself to feel compassionate towards yourself for suffering in this way. Think how nice it would be if you did not have to suffer in this way. The law of cause and effect says that this experience was created by you, that you created the cause to experience this suffering. So search back in this life to see if you can recall ever doing something similar to someone else. Have you ever said an angry word, an impatient word, accuse someone of something they didn't do? Said words that were purposely meant to hurt, or words that have been irresponsible, inconsiderate, or dismissive. I'm trying to really understand that the suffering you experienced when someone hurt you is the same kind of suffering others experience when you hurt them. Try to generate compassion for the suffering that others have felt due to your actions. with the genuine wish that they be free of such suffering. Understanding that generating compassion for those who have harmed and those who receive the harm is not contradictory. Both, it's an appropriate response to both situations. The person who's doing harm is creating the cause to suffer in the future. Those receiving the harm is experiencing the result of the harm they've done in the past. So generating regret for actions we have done is not an action of blame. It's an action of responsibility. Okay. Come back to your breath. Anybody have any questions? You understand the point. One of the dangers of doing purification practice, especially on a daily basis, is that we don't really understand that this isn't about beating ourselves up or keeping a chart of all the mistakes we made or blaming ourselves for being an idiot. It's none of those things.
So recognize, like, why
You know, I wasn't listening. Can you say that again?
So acknowledging regret, acknowledging what you did.
Acknowledging what you
recognizing
did.
You did it is part of it. You have to analyze why you did it, where, what caused that. To be
Okay,
able to
no, I would say you don't have to analyze why you did it.
Analyze where it came from. Analyze
What do you
why
mean
it
by
happened.
where you came?
Analyze why it happened.
Why it happened? Okay.
What the cause was.
Do people understand the distinction that's being made here? Well, that's not enough to help.
No, no, well, so the first thing that came to me was thinking of like one was a meditation that when you were analyzing, there is an analyzing type of meditation that you could do with the things that you do on a daily basis or whenever you wanted to, and you could then, well, learning how to do that meditation, and it can actually break down, and you could actually then see it and make choice and come to different decisions. With
Okay, I think we're getting off
I'm
track.
sorry. So I guess, well, one's a meditation in that sense, and I think for myself, I know I went off divergent. And then with this practice, it's just it's a cleansing, but knowing those things, but not beating yourself up and analyzing it and going into it. It's just.
Okay, we're getting off track. Okay, so what are we trying to understand with a meditation like this? This is key. So if you don't get it, this is something to work with.
My process, I recall moments in my life that maybe I feel offended.
Mhm.
And I think the person didn't want to offend me. And this. me
Okay,
too.
so you can remember
Yes,
events in which
Yes.
someone did
And
something
me
you
too.
felt offended.
Yeah, me too. I did something. The purpose wasn't to affect the other person, but the person took as something.
And that you've done the same thing to someone else.
Yeah.
So what is the point of that? What are you trying to generate when you're trying to generate regret? What are you regretting?
About the action,
No,
causing harm.
the harm that's being experienced. You know, we want to really encourage ourselves to touch that feeling of pain or hurt, whether it's a little bitty hurt or a great big hurt. And sometimes the way to do that is to think back on times when you've been hurt and then take that next step of saying, have I ever done that to anybody else? And letting it help generate in you this idea of, oh, I don't want to cause that feeling in someone else. I don't like it when it happens to me. And I don't want to be the source of it for someone else. We have to get in touch with true suffering. You know, that it's not, doesn't matter how big of an event it is, how small of an event it is, in terms of trying to generate regret. We want to be able to feel it because we can say all the words of the practice, you know, whatever we've chosen to do to try to remedy the situation. We can even apologize, and we've all probably experienced the apology that's not really an apology, but you're just saying it because you want to move on, you know, or because your boss says, you know, or your parents say, you know, whatever, you know. It's not regret unless it is heartfelt. And part of that heartfeltness comes from really taking responsibility for that hurt and knowing what that hurt is because you felt it too. So when someone hurts you, that's that opportunity to go, this is my karma ripening, my negative karma ripening. I can learn from this. I've caused someone else to feel exactly like this. So you can have compassion arise for yourself and for others. Because you know, you deserve, I mean, deserve is, I don't even like the word because it's not about deserve, but compassion's an appropriate response when we're suffering and when others are suffering. Compassion is just that wish that they be free of suffering. And then we want that to generate the intention. May I help with that? May I try not to harm someone else? You know, may I not take this situation as an excuse to hurt back? It's about, now you don't have to share any of this information. And in the moment, you know, this isn't about saying, oh, you have to go out and bear your target to the world and let them know exactly how to hurt you. You know, so you don't have to feel like it's a method to not protect yourself. But in relationships, it's often very appropriate to talk about it. If you want that relationship to grow and whatever. With the stranger on the bus, maybe not. Because then you might scare them. Oh, we've got a crazy person on the bus. So. Okay. Don't know. Can you get that little single bar that's on the top of the pictures of everybody? You see at the very top of the pictures of each person?
Black bar.
It, keep going.
Left up, left, there, the left.
That one.
Yeah.
Click that. Thank you. Okay, as Lama Yeshe was the founder of the FPMT centers, was a teacher of Lama Zopa Rinpoche, said this: when we catch ourselves saying something senseless or nasty, we are apt to say, oh, I don't know why I said that. It just came out that way. To assume that there is no particular reason for our uncontrolled actions is a mistake. Not one word has ever been uttered that was not motivated by either a positive or negative attitude. What do you think? What is this aspect about?
Ownership.
Huh?
Ownership.
Ownership. Recognizing that we're not just acting out of the blue. Most of our actions of body, speech, and mind are in fact just habits. And we're just being propelled along with our habits. But there are habits because we've done them a lot. So our, habit of being sarcastic around certain people, that's a habit. And sarcasm, when we really look at it, is a desire to show someone else up. And we need to kind of go, what's that about? Why do I always have this one-upmanship kind of thing going? I'm just throwing out examples that I'm very familiar with. So, so we need, so part of this process is recognizing that we're unskillful. Everybody's unskillful. But we want to be, kind of notice what's behind that unskillful energy. Are we trying to get even? Are we trying to look better than? Are we trying to, punch someone in the nose with our anger? No. This also gets to the fact that everything that, I'll get to that in a minute. Okay. So the process of purification is referred to doing these 4 opponent powers, 4 steps. You'll see them by different names in different translations, but if you read the description of them, you'll kind of be able to figure out which one's referring to which. So regret is, the first opponent power. It opposes the mind that, that propelled the action. Gives you a reason, that pain. Because the pain of regret is kind of similar to the pain that we cause. I did that. Yuck. Reliance. Reliance is about that we can't just do this on our own. If we could, we wouldn't regret so many actions. We need to rely on the teachings. Sorry, can I help?
I'll try to the meaning of reliance.
We'll go through what it means, and then a different word may be appropriate for you. But it's mainly about turning to the teachings for their advice on what to do. it's about both relying on the teachings for what is a negative action. You know, you have to kind of study up and realize, oh yeah, every time I want to hurt someone, that's not a good start. You know, it also is about the fact that we rely on sentient beings. We both rely on sentient beings for our happiness. We rely on sentient beings for learning our way out of causing suffering. Remedy is the action we decide to take in order to purify the cause. It can be anything, really. It can be an apology if it has these other three opponent powers. You know, so it's a heartfelt apology that has regret at its, you know, at its core, that has a resolve to try not to do that again at its core, you know, that is incompatible, that is compatible with the teachings. Okay. Lama Yeshe says the power of regret is what makes your confession perfect and powerful. So this is why I'm spending so much time on regret. It is the regret that's going to help you resolve not to do this again. No. It's what gives it power. You can even reverse before culmination, the whole ripening of the karma. If you confess and apply antidotes to purify the action before it's completed. This is those situations where something goes out of our mouth and we immediately regret it. You know, we haven't even finished the sentence in our heads going, why am I saying this? You know, with practice, when we get really good about owning our mistakes and wanting to stop them and wanting to mitigate the harm that's done, we can get really good at this step as well, because it just comes fast, you know, and but it comes fast from practicing it a lot, you know, from your daily practice, from having something, you know, at your fingertips to say, you know, like Om Mani Padme Hum, you know, generating compassion for yourself and the other person, you know, just immediately thinking that and wanting to, and then immediately going, I'm sorry, I shouldn't, you know, I said that, I shouldn't have said that. It was hurtful, you know, can we start again? I'm being a jerk, you know. Yes.
I just looked up for these ladies the meaning of reliance, and it says dependence on or trust in someone or something.
And we'll get to the thank you. And we'll get to what it means in this context in a minute. So this is, you know, the good news about becoming familiar with negative actions, negative body, speech, and mind, is that you become familiar enough with it, you'll catch yourself in the act and backtrack. You know? So what we want to do, like on a daily practice, what we'd be doing is thinking, what harm did I do today? You know, did I say any unkind words? Was I impatient? Was I careless with something? You know, and then because we know we have a lot of these seeds planted from before, you know, not just this life. According to Buddhism, we've had countless lives. So we've done it again. This is how it becomes a habit. We've done it again and again and again and again. So we just tack on that we just say, we try to regret anything we don't remember. So we regret what we remember about today, and then we regret whatever we did in this life that was similar to it, and any that you don't remember at all from this life or past lives. You know, some things we know we recognize as, oh, I have this habit, I do this a lot. You know, so that does not mean that there's no point in purifying it or regretting it. It is the buildup of regret in your mind that will help you stop doing it down the road, or at least doing it less. So, but we make it really big so that we're not just, you know, because we have a lot of catching up to do.
I can see that makes me a little sick.
This is where we have to, you know, when we start to feel a little ill about the things we've done, the habits we have that are kind of really ucky, we have to really give ourselves self-compassion and recognize that, you know, we didn't know what we were doing. We didn't recognize the harm. But now that we recognize the harm, that desire, you know, that feels bad about it is a good thing. You know, so that icky feeling becomes the, you know, like, we don't want to turn it into guilt. You know, guilt isn't, I mean, I don't know technically, but in our culture, it seems pretty much that guilt's a passive response that says, I am just that way. And it kind of gives us permission not to try to change. And it makes us feel really bad about ourselves to the point where we can think we can't change. Regret is just this very simple response to going, look what I did. It was harmful. I regret doing that harm. I want to not do it again. It's an active response that, oh, you know, let's find what I can do about this and do it. So the power of reliance. So one part of reliance is relying on the teachings. So the popular example is that if you were to swallow poison, you'd go find an expert medical help on what antidote is it to the poison. And you would listen to the instructions and you'd put them into practice. You'd implement the instructions, you know, and you wouldn't just, you know, just kind of go, oh, that sounds good, da, 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 da. Why? Why would you, what, you know, if you swallow poison, what's your motivation?
Like,
You just might like to stay alive or not be very sick. We want to develop that kind of feeling with our regret for our actions of body, speech, and mind, where, oh, look what I did, you know, and have that desire. Oh, what did the teachings say? Okay, I need to purify this. Then you purify it that night. You don't carry it around in a suitcase going, I am such a bad person. If you do that with the poison, how stupid am I that I took poison? What are you going to do? Anybody? Get sick and die. It's not an effective strategy. So it's not about beating yourself up or coming up with reasons to carry this burden for the rest of your life or all time for that matter. It is about, what can I do about it? So learning about the mind, learning that we can change our mind, that we can change our habits, and da, 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 are all preparations to being able to change actions that harm others, to prevent them from arising in the future. We're also relying on other sentient beings, the sentient beings we've harmed. No. By generating, it helps us generate compassion. By having this heartfelt regret, we can have genuine compassion for their suffering,
Like the mosquito.
like the mosquito. This is the poison story. I've already told that story. Well, it's just something, the story that works for me is if, say, you look down and you realize there's a snake in your lap. Would you go, oh, what an idiot I am for having, sitting here with a snake in my lap? No, you try to do something to get the snake out of your lap, and there are many different things, right? It's not always the same response. So we can't rely on what we've always done. That might get us killed. Yelling at the snake's probably not going to help. Being sarcastic to the snake's not going to help. Wanting to kill the snake's not going to help. None of those things are going to help in that moment. Staying still might help, might not help. So if you're going to a snake infested area, study up. So we need, we're, considering that maybe someone knows more about this karma thing and this purification thing than I do. And so I'm going to turn to those instructions instead of doing what I always have done, which might be to ignore it, to justify it, to turn it into guilt and think it and use it as proof that you can't change. So this is a different technique that you can use to try to change that. So in the Buddhist tradition, it is not the same as saying, praying to God to fix this for you. I don't know if you can pray to God to have him fix this for you. No one's doing the work here except you. This is about your determination to change your habits of mind, your habits of speech, your habits of body. You have to generate the desire to do it. You have to want to not cause suffering. And of course, the good news is if you study the whole path, you find out this is the way to generate the cause for happiness, is to stop causing others to suffer. So we're relying on the Buddha's teachings, but the Buddha can't do it for us. That's obvious because otherwise we'd all quit doing, we would have stopped eons ago because Buddhists would have just fixed us. So we want to develop the habit, instead of going to guilt, instead of thinking, I can't change it, this is terrible, what a bad person I am, blah, 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 blah. We want to go to a mind, we want to use our logic and remember the teachings. The mind is a dependent arising. It too is the result of causes and conditions. It's constantly changing. And I can affect change. And we can choose what direction we want that change to go. This takes practice and skill and desire, the desire to do it differently. So we can use our reasoning capacity, and we can use examples from our own life about all sorts of ways in which we have changed habits that we've had in the past as proof that we're capable of it. So remedies. I took a picture of the remedies. There are many types of remedies. And in one of Lama Zopa's books, he just calls it, it's also in the Liberation of the Palm of Your Hand and Lama Rinpoche and all sorts of books. but I forgot to make note of it. I just took a picture of the page. Reciting Buddha's holy names. That's like the practice of the 35 Buddhas, which we will talk about one night. Making statues or painting, so people who make satsas or paint tankas or, silk applique tankas or whatever kind of tanka it is. That's one method. Making images of the Buddha, in other words, or of Buddhas. Reciting sutras. So the recitation of the Golden Sutra, the Golden Light Sutra, or a recitation of any sutra. Even though it's in Tibetan or Sanskrit or whatever, we don't have to read it in English, although it's helpful to read it in English, because if you can't pronounce the Tibetan, it's kind of hard. But reciting Chenrezi's mantra, that's the mantra of compassion, Om Mani Padme Hum, or Medicine Buddha's mantra, or Vajrasattva mantra, or there are lots of mantras. We have no shortage of mantras. The most powerful purification is to do the practice that your guru advises. Like Lama Zopa Rinpoche and Lama Yeshe recommended, 35 Buddhas and Vajrasattva practice. So one is reciting the names of 35 Buddhas and the 7 medicine Buddhas, and one is a 100-syllable mantra to Vajrasattva. But you can also you can sponsor a bunch of satsas being made. In Asia, you'll see that a lot. Well, they'll, I'm not sure if that's as powerful as, doing it yourself. But of course, what does it depend on whether something is powerful or not? Can you speak louder?
Intention.
Intention. That heartfelt intention of all those 4 things, the regret, the resolve, the reliance on the teachings, you're not doing it because, ooh, I'd really like to have, 21 taras all around my house. So we have to be clear. If one's guru has passed away and one did not confess the negative karma accumulated with respect to him while he was alive, one way to purify is to explain and confess to the nearest disciple of that guru. One should make offerings and with great repentance apologize and confess. So that's the role of the FPMT as well, which is the organizing body of these things, because since our teacher died last year now. Okay. But we do it, you can turn any practice, like coming to Medicine Buddha Puja, doing Vajrasattva practice, doing 35 Buddhas, but reciting the 4 immeasurables again and again. You can do any practice, Dharma practice, not robbing the bank practice, with these 4 opponent powers, and it will purify. Purification means you're purifying your mind. You're working to remove that pollution of the mind so that you'll have that clear, calm mind. It's not about erasing your past, right? It's about taking responsibility for our actions and then resolving not to do it. Meditating on emptiness is another strong purifier. Why would that be? Don, why would that be? Is he still there?
I am.
So why would meditating on emptiness be a purifier?
Because you're focusing on things being independent or arising, and that nothing is fixed or permanent. Everything is causes and conditions. You can change your causes and conditions.
Is that light strip on the thing my computer's plugged into? Can someone click the a button on it. I just noticed my computer's like dying. So.
And
Huh? Yes, thank you. Okay, Don. Start again.
Okay, so by meditating on emptiness, we are dissolving our firm held grasp that things are real, things are permanent as they are, and that they really don't exist in the way that we see them. So the act of the negative karma is all dependent on causes and conditions that led to it. It's not a permanent thing. It's not I don't know, predetermined or set that it's going to happen, and we can make changes.
Yes, thank you. The root of all of our negative states of mind is our ignorance of how things exist. So meditating on emptiness is an effort to understand how things actually exist. If you're not familiar with emptiness at all yet, don't worry about it. I mean, but this, for those of you who are somewhat familiar with this is also a purification. It purifies, because the way we become enlightened, the way we become an Arya being that is free of samsara, liberated being, is that when you realize how things actually exist, have a direct experience of that, after you remove all, the seeds of your negative karma, that realization eliminates them all at once. We get rid of them all. We will no longer have the foundation for them to arise. There would be zero ability for you to get angry at someone. It wouldn't make sense for you to get angry at someone. There'd be no basis for it. So this is good news, because that means, if we try to purify all our karmic seeds, one karmic seed at a time, it's going to take a long time. So we want to do both of these things. But first, we want to get in the habit of trying to purify our daily mistakes every day, because karma expands. We know it from just the fact that if we don't decide to stop doing some action, what's the likelihood of us doing it again? Probably even maybe tomorrow. Or later in the same day. And every time we do it, we're making that habit deeper and deeper, so that it will just happen more and more. You wonder how some people are born angry. Well, they practiced anger an awful lot in their previous lives, to the point where they have no control over their anger. People who are, and they're good qualities. My kid brother was generous from age 2 or something, he obviously practiced generosity in previous lives. So it's not just our negative qualities, it can be our good qualities as well. And the more we do those things, the more we do those things. It's that simple. So the resolve, I'm sorry?
And I was gonna, and I don't know if it's proper for the conversation, the part where you were talking about what the emptiness and what Don was describing always comes up to me, as others have described, when looking at or trying to relate that aspect, was like taking a car and then taking the pieces and parts, and here, oh, now you call this car a door, and this, that, keep going, breaking it down further and further.
So how would that apply to a situation of where you're regretting something you've done?
I guess it's in a sense of not analyzing it, but realizing, at least for myself, if I get it right, that that partly, how it's independent of one another, and that all of these occurrences have been built up to this one moment.
Okay, that they're not independent of one another.
Yeah.
Okay, just making sure I heard that correctly. Okay, so like, for example, he's using a classic example that's taught traditionally about, that if you look at a car and you really try to ultimately analyze that car, you would look at all the parts, right? What is the car? Oh, well, it's, this part and that part. It's all those parts together. And then if someone says, oh, so the parts of the car are the car. And then they say, well, all those parts of your car are in the junkyard over there. See that stack? Is it a car? No, it's not a car. It's the parts of a car. So you lose the car very quickly. Now you're talking about the parts of the car. And it goes on and on and on. So you're looking at the way it appears to you, and you're dismantling it. That firm view we have of how things look. So when someone does something that harms us, we can look at it and say, okay, where's the harm here? Because if our response is just, oh, this is really harmful, we can also dismantle it and start looking at, okay, well, I really think this is bad 6 months from now. Will I even remember 6 months from now? To kind of help us pause and not be reactive to things, to understand there's a whole bunch of causes and conditions coming together in this event. Do we want to let it affect the way we think, speak, or act? So there are all sorts of techniques. So thinking about how things don't exist independently, that they're actually independent on other, that this moment in time where we feel harmed is not isolated all by itself. The act of this one evil person who's trying to get us, that we can see it from the bigger perspective, like standing back and pretending you're watching a movie, and then decide how you want to respond.
So,
Yep.
For example, that person who wants to harm you is coming from a place of also feeling harm.
All of that, exactly. Recognizing that people, when they're harming you, are probably suffering. And it's their response to their suffering. And so that's why compassion can arise. So when we do the last step, we've done it, we've generated our regret, we've turned to the Buddha, and in our practices, the way we show reliance is by saying the, refuge prayer and the generating bodhicitta, to get both parts of reliance. Then we do the remedy, which is all of those things, whether it's a Vajrasattva practice or a medicine Buddha practice or a four immeasurables practice or whatever the practice is. But then at the end, we want to resolve not to do that again. And we need to be very realistic about it so that we don't end up lying. Doesn't help your purification practice is if at the end you just say, I'll never do that again. If that's probably not true. So you want to be very realistic. You would say, oh, I'm going to try not to do that for 24 hours. Or I'm going to try not to do that the next time I talk to this person, or at least for the first 15 minutes of talking to this person, or whatever is realistic for you. There are some things that you may do and go, I'm never doing that again. And it will be true. But they're rare. So.
Most of the time, I know the difference between intention, being sincere, throwing off a statement. There's a difference. I think I usually know it either at that moment.
The difference between Well,
You
well,
just
that's
say-
not at the moment. That's
Just saying
retrospect.
that truly having that result.
Oh, you mean when you're doing the practice, having that resolve? Yes, absolutely. But you know, we can lie to ourselves all the time. You know, especially when there's something about it that about our self-image that's involved in the action, you know, like not wanting to think we're capable of doing that, you know, or not wanting to think that we keep doing that or whatever. So we want to be careful, you know, and we want to make it genuine. We can't be like 100% accurate or something because we don't know, you know, but we want to be honest about our habits. If you are impatient a lot, you don't make a promise to quit being impatient. That would not be accurate because it's a habit, and habits arise before we're aware that they're arising, you know. So our strong habits, which might be the ones we want to most end because they are the most harmful, are the hardest to end. So it's, you know, we have to really, okay, you know, this is the whole idea behind one day at a time. You know, you just don't do it now. And then the next hour, I'm not doing it this hour either. And the next hour, I'm not doing it this hour either. But you don't, you know, overstep. Okay. So those of you who've been doing purification practices for a while, do you have any questions about them? Yep.
I do. The one that I've used, I used to have a booklet, so it's a large assumption.
Right, about yourself a practice. Yep.
And there's a time, well, there's a lot of the visualizations.
Right.
Is what they do. Through and absorbing in the white light, those things. I think I've gotten it, an understanding of why I'm like honey coming, just the different, just the visualizations. I guess I'd really have to, I'd have to really highlight.
Okay, so yeah, so when you think of a question, either after you've done your purification practice or while you're doing your write it down and bring them so that we can look at that, you know. And we will, for those of you who haven't done one yet, we'll do one next week. We may start with 35 Buddhas, we may start with Vajrasattva. You know, both are great. Lama Tsongkhapa did 1,000,000 35 Buddha prostrations, I think. You know, so nice thing about 35 Buddhas is that, you know, like actually what Rinpoche, Lama Zopa Rinpoche likes to recommend or like to recommend is to do 35 Buddhas in the morning and do Vajrasattva at night. So, but I really want people who've been doing these practices to bring your questions in. You know, those of you who are new to it, we'll keep discussing how to do it. But next week, like we'll do a practice, and then I want you to do the practice at home and then bring your questions in. You know, like what are your obstacles? What comes up? You know, whatever. Does that make sense? You know, whatever you struggle with, whether it's struggle about, you know, generating that heartfelt regret or coming up with a remedy. You know, that's what's nice about having these practices assigned to us from, you know, from like Vajrasattva or whatever, because it gives you something to do. You know, you don't have to be creative. You just do, you know, but it doesn't change the fact that you can also, in addition to your daily purification practice, apologize to people, acknowledge what you've done, all those things, all those standard things. What the Buddhist practice is about, the purification practices are about, are helping us to train our minds not to do these things again, you know. So hence these 4 powers to really make it go into our mind stream in a way that will be effective in helping us develop a habit. not just, you know, think about a habit. Because it's hard to make ourselves change habits that we are very familiar with. And purification is one of the best ways to do it. Not only that, the more powerful your whole process of this is, the less those seeds will cause you suffering. You know, it makes the suffering that they cause less. You know, at first it's not going to do much because, you know, we're not really there in our practice. But the stronger our mind gets at it, the less suffering we'll have as a result of it. So even though the seeds may ripen, we have no control over when they ripen, but you know, the way in which they ripen may be different, you know, until we can stop it all together, and then we don't create the cause to have them ripen. So whatever. And then the last thing is you always want to rejoice. So like right now, take a moment to rejoice in your efforts to listen with an open mind, to consider these ideas, that other people have been doing it with you, you know. Isn't that a good thing? It's so cool that people really do want to not harm each other, you know. And so we want to rejoice in that. That's a wonderful, wonderful desire. So, and everything we do that plants a seed in our mind stream, first of all, it all creates karma. There's consequences to everything. This allows us to, that will grow into the seed that can effectively purify. So anyway, any thoughts at home? It's a very unchatty crowd. Okay, so we didn't say any prayers in the beginning, but we said a motivation. So what we can do at the end is, you know, dedicate any merits that we may have created, which are the positive karmic seeds that we're planting on our mind stream that ripen as positive things, you know, the foods we like, the enough money in the bank, you know, all those things. So we want to dedicate them not just to benefit, you know, not just, they will benefit us because that's the deal with karma, but we want to make the wish that it not just benefits yourselves, but that it ripples out to benefit others. So I think that's it for tonight. So may our gurus live long. May Lama Zopa Rinpoche quickly return to us. Have a safe trip home. Enjoy being home already, those of you at home. See you soon.